sanctuary. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors who may be present. And we'd like to invite you downstairs or online for community time following the service. Our mission here is to build community, search for meaning, deepen our spirituality, and work together to make a better world. To learn more about First Parish or Unitarian Universalism, please visit uuwayland.org or contact Kate Holland, Director of Lifespan Education and Engagement. Or you can reach out to a member of the parish committee, such as myself, or to Reverend Stephanie if you have any ideas or questions about First Parish. Big thanks to all of our other service participants whose names are in the order of service. Please note that Middlesex County currently has a low risk for COVID, so masks are optional. Please mask or not as you prefer. So please join me now in taking a moment to say hello to one another, including a wave to the front camera and those online. So. I have a couple of other announcements to make. Before we start. The Equal Exchange Table today is now in the vestry. It's not in the common area, but it's in the vestry today. Alyssa is going to have a drawing. See who gets the very first gift card at Russell's. And then one other thing I'd like to mention too, if any of you have any questions about Canvas, or if you did not receive a pledge packet or hear from your canvasser, please feel free to see me after the service. And now
What is Canvas, Larry?
I'm sorry?
What is Canvas?
Oh dear.
Is it the same as stewardship?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Wasn't expecting that question. Okay, Lisa.
Our winner of the Russell's gift card is Barb Hefner. Is she here? That's all right. She will get it next time we see her.
Okay. Welcome again, and let the service begin.
Hello and welcome. My name is Alyssa Lee. I'm the Ministerial Intern here at First Parish, and my pronouns are she or they. Today we are continuing our series on exploring a variety of faith traditions with an examination of Islam during the month of March. In many Islamic countries, poetry is a powerful form of learning and social expression and is central to Islamic mysticism or Sufism. For myself and for many people in our congregation, reading poetry can likewise be an important spiritual practice. So today we will be looking to the words of 13th century poet and Islamic mystic Muhammad Jalal al-Din al-Baqi al-Rumi, who's more popularly known in the West as Rumi. He was born in 1207 near the city of Balkh in what is now in Afghanistan. And when he was a child, his family fled invaders and settled in Konya in present-day Turkey. During his lifetime, Rumi wrote some 51,000 verses on love, friendship, and his deeply held religious beliefs. And though we are separated by an expanse of time, geography, and for many of us, religious ideology, Rumi's poems still bring deep meaning and insight to people around the globe. Our service will be a little bit different today. We will have 3 readings of Rumi's poems and reflections on their resonance with the reader throughout the service. I'd now like to invite John Baird to come up and provide a testimonial.
Alyssa is.
Should be on.
Morning, friends. Morning, John. I was going to ask if you could hear me, and Molly. Okay. I'm here to give testimony on why it is that Molly and I are enthusiastic members of this parish. And it all relates, of course, to the fundraising canvas that's going on. Having started about a week ago, and as you know from the draw of the winner, already there is a competitive piece to this whole thing that you can get a prize. I'm not sure of the value of the prize, but probably a little bit less than your pledge. I hope it's no surprise to people in this parish that Molly and John Beard. Molly will hold up her head and hand and turn her head so if anybody doesn't know her. We are enthusiastic members of this congregation and have been since our arrival in Wayland in 1958. We're in the mid-60s of years of connection with this wonderful institution. We love this beautiful antique wooden building that sits on a glorious location right in the heart of Wayland, and that is part of our web of affection for this institution. For us, this building stands as a symbol of the values of equity, inclusion, and justice that are considered here within the church. We believe that it houses a wonderful congregation of individuals and families who show an outstanding level of care for each other and for the rest of humanity. We support its religious outlook, which includes respect in most ways celebration of the religious outlook of others. We love its ministerial leadership and its lay leadership. We really dig its music. We appreciate its enabling us to offer help and friendship for others, both within our own congregation and outside. And by the same token, as we are now in our 90s, we are the recipients of help of various kinds, and we really appreciate that. This place and you, its people, mean more to Molly and me than you can imagine. It's important to us that this institution, and you, continue to be available to meet this community's needs. We extend our sincerest thanks and our love to all who comprise this First Parish
and we urge that you gladly give your full support to the current candidates. Molly and I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite the Cullen family to join us, or to lead us actually, in our covenant, which is our promise to one another, and to light our chalice.
Good morning. Please join me as we say together, with open minds and loving hearts, we gather to search for meaning, to care for one another, and to work together for a better world.
So I've been told this next hymn, number 361 in your gray hymnal, is a favorite. And I think there are some moves that have been historically done here. Is that right? You're supposed to stand up on your tippy toes during what part? Joyful day. Today is a joyful day. So that's a tippy toe moment if you're able. So please rise and embody your spirit if you're able to. Number 361.
Is that better?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It doesn't get much closer than that, John. I'll pass on putting it in my mouth. My name is Kate Holland. I'm the Director of Lifespan Education and Engagement here at First Parish, and I have a story to share with you. The story I have this morning comes from the tradition of Islam. And so it starts in a field with a man named Mullah Nasruddin. No, I'm looking at Laura. One more time. Nasruddin. And so he was out in his field. He'd been plowing and working all day long. And he was hot and dirty, and he was so hungry. He was celebrating Ramadan, and so he had fasted and had no water or food since before the sun was up. So he was starving. And so he wanted to go because the wealthiest man in their village had invited everyone to come to his house to break their fast. Oh, he could just imagine how fabulous the food was going to be. There would be hummus and bread, olives. Oh my gosh, it sounded so good. He could almost smell it. But better than that was the dessert. My favorite part as well. There were date rolls, and there was going to be figs, and oh my goodness, there would be baklava. He couldn't wait. So he walked to the wealthiest man's home, even though his clothes were dirty and he was kind of sweaty. He was like, it's fine. Yeah, I want to be there and I want to start the meal. And so when he got there, he knocked on the door, and the man opened the door and looked at him. He gave him quite a look. He didn't say anything to him. He just kind of stepped aside in the door and kind of gave him that look. Well, Nasruddin thought, that's kind of strange, not much of a greeting here, but the food. So he went over to get his food and put it on his plate, and he went to sit down, and no one really made any room for him at the table. He had to kind of squeeze himself in. And when he sat down, the people next to him gave him the look as well. So he was sitting there, and he asked for someone to pass him some wine, and no one did. No one would even look at him. So he had to reach over and get it. And he's sitting there. He started to eat a little bit, but the food didn't even taste good because he felt so uncomfortable while he was there. So he decided, even though he was really hungry, he was not going to stay there. So he walked out the door, and as he was walking, he kind of started getting angry. Ramadan was a time not only for fasting, but to be kind and treat people and give them good deeds if you could. He didn't feel like these people had treated him very well. So he got halfway home and he said, I am going to teach these people a lesson. So when he got home, he took off his dirty clothes, he washed himself up, he put on his favorite clothing that was really nice, and he put on his favorite coat. It was fabulous, don't you think? And it was wool, and it was lovely, and it was warm. And so he put on his favorite coat, and he walked back to the man's house. And when he got there and knocked on the door, the wealthy man looked at him, Nasruddin, I'm so happy to see you. Come join us, come join us. And it was such a different experience. And then people who were eating called over to him, Nasruddin, we're so happy you're here. It's so great. And so he decided he would go and get his bowl of fruit and food. He filled up his plate high, and then he sat down and he took the food and put it in the pocket of his coat. Delicious coat, isn't it delicious? And he would take another piece of food and put it in his pocket. Oh, don't you love that? It's so good, the bread is great. And then he'd put more in, and people started noticing this odd behavior, and they were looking at him. And finally the wealthy man said, Nasruddin, what are you doing? And he said, well, you know, when I came before in my work clothes, I didn't get much of a reception. Not many people welcomed me in. And when I came in my wonderful coat, everyone said hello and welcomed me to the table. So I thought it must be my coat that was welcome at the break of the fast. Everyone was very embarrassed and realized what they had done. So how many times have we looked at someone and not even seen them? How many times have we walked by someone and because they didn't have fine clothes or they were a little dirty, we didn't notice them. I think it's a good lesson for us to remember. So thank you all very much for listening, and I'm going to invite all of us to sing our Sikh friends out.
Good morning. I'm Lynn Kavanaugh, and I love poetry. Poems make me think, and poems make me feel like others who are brought to tears over a great symphony or a wonderful painting. I am moved by a beautifully written poem. I really don't think of myself as a person with spiritual practices, but reading poetry is probably the closest I come. And as an aside, those of you who haven't had a chance to come to one of Alyssa's poetry evenings, I think we have one in May, should give it a try. This morning, I want to read a poem entitled The Guest House by Rumi. It's a poem that more than anything makes me think, but of equal importance, it encourages me to feel. The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. What an incredibly contemporary perspective for a man writing in the 13th century. Clearly, my Irish Catholic heritage spent more energy suppressing emotion than welcoming it. When I was a moody adolescent, I was in good New England fashion, encouraged to go outside and get some fresh air, or do something nice for somebody else and shake off those bad feelings. Poetry for me has become a way of opening my guest house to all visitors, though I never realized I could describe it as a spiritual practice. Every morning before I get out of bed, I read a poem that comes to me on email. These poems express for me and let me feel a wide range of emotions. They guide me in how to live, and they show me where my passions lie. They comfort me, they bring me joy, and they offer a pathway to understanding the world around me. Rumi saw the value of letting every feeling in. Poetry, like that of Rumi, gives me the vehicle to follow his guidance. By way of example, I'd like to read one other short poem this morning from a very different time from that when Rumi lived. I read this poem for the first time on Wednesday morning, a poem written during this time of increasing threats to the LGBTQ community and the more recent attacks on drag queens. The poem is named Sissy, and it's written by Aaron Smith. I can't remember my dad calling me a sissy, but he definitely told me not to be a sissy. I secretly, or not so secretly, liked all the sissy things. We had a hunting dog named Sissy. Really, Sissy. My father nicknamed my sister Sissy. Still, he says, how's Sissy? And he calls her Sissy when she goes home to visit him. Belinda, Sissy, is one of the toughest people I know. My sissy sister has kicked someone's ass, which isn't sissiest, I guess, though I want to redefine sissy into something fabulous, tough and tender, sissy tough. Drag queens are damn tough, and sissies. I'm pretty effing tough, and a big, big sissy too. And kind. Tough and kind and happy. A sissy. I guess reading poetry is my spiritual practice, my prayer, my meditation. Poems break my heart, encourage me to reflect, fill me with gratitude, and connect me to the plights and the paths of others. Thank you to Rumi and to all other poets for their incredible gifts.
Thank you, Lynn. That was wonderful. And I definitely resonate with so much of what you said. Please join us for our next hymn. It's in the Teal hymnal. It's 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Please join me in the spirit of prayer or meditation. Let's take a deep breath in and out. Let's take another deep breath in and out. Our meditation today was written by Martha Munson. It was inspired by a line of poetry from Wendell Berry. It says, "For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free." She writes, "In this time of meditation, may you rest in the grace of the world and be free. In weakness, may you sense the strength of the eternal hills and rest in the grace of the world. In failure, may you be upheld like the buoyancy of water and rest in the grace of the world. In limitation, may you remember that the choices may be as great as the expanse of the sky and rest in the grace of the world. In insecurity, may you feel the solid earth beneath your feet and rest in the grace of the world. In despair, may you hear the joy in bird singing and rest in the grace of the world. In fear, may you feel the warmth of the sun and rest in the grace of the world. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. So be it." Now let us take a moment to just rest in that grace in our moment of stillness. I'd like to share a poem this morning called Mystic Odes, number 833.
You didn't share my joy and
Our
sorrow.
death is our wedding with eternity. What is the secret? God is one. The sunlight splits when entering the windows of the house. This multiplicity exists in the cluster of grapes. It is not in the juice made from the grapes. For he who is living in the light of God, the death of the carnal soul is a blessing. Regarding him, say neither bad nor good, for he is gone beyond the good and bad. Fix your eyes on God and do not talk about what is invisible, so that he may place another look in your eyes. It is in the vision of the physical eyes that no invisible or secret thing exists. But when the eye is turned toward the light of God, what thing could remain hidden under such a light? Although all lights emanate from the divine light, don't call all these lights the light of God. It is the eternal light, which is the light of God. The ephemeral light is an attribute of the body and the flesh. O God, who gives the grace of vision, the bird of vision is flying towards you with the wings of desire. That's from Rumi. What I love most about poetry is that though it may often be written with great specificity, in that specificity, I often find something that rings true to me, that demonstrates the hidden universality of the human experience. And I think that's what makes it such a powerful tool for me. In the specific, we find the universal. This is how a man who wrote poetry in the 13th century can still have resonance for people, lo, these many centuries later. The reason I chose the poem that I just read was, first, I thought it was beautiful, but second, it demonstrates the religiosity of Rumi that is often overlooked or forgotten when people in the West are sharing his poetry. The most famous Western translator of Rumi, Coleman Barks, whose translations are beautiful, is an American poet who said in his introduction to the Essential Rumi that He does not believe placing Rumi in his central and historical context is necessary, that he wants to free his text into his essence. However, in doing that, Rumi becomes detached from his Islamic context, which was central to his life and to his work. This detachment can have political implications too. Omid Safi, who's a professor of Middle Eastern and Islamic studies at Duke University, posits that translators and theologians in the Victorian period who first began to uncouple mystical poetry from its Islamic roots did so because they could not reconcile their ideas about what he calls a desert religion with its unusual moral and legal codes and the work of poets like Rumi. They in turn settled on the explanation that, as he says, these people are mystical not because of Islam, but in spite of it. Yet in truth, you can't separate Rumi's mystical poetry from his deep religious beliefs. His father was a preacher and religious scholar, and Rumi himself spent several years studying Islam and eventually became a seminary teacher himself. Fatima Kasharavez, professor of Persian and comparative literature at Washington University in St. Louis, says of Rumi that he goes through the religion, he lives it, absorbs it, and uses it in his way. The poem that I read indicates a deep belief in and relationship with God. The poem states, "For he who is living in the light of God, the death of the carnal soul is a blessing." For some of us in the UU faith tradition, this deep, rooted and abiding belief in God, particularly in the rejoicing of being united with God in death, is not an idea that many of us resonate with, or perhaps don't resonate with anymore. For much of my childhood and youth, I had a very strong faith in God and Jesus, but slowly the cracks started appearing. And hard as I tried to just keep believing, to keep that living into that relationship with the God that I had known throughout my life, to absorb it even, I just couldn't anymore. Perhaps for many of you, this vision of God, this depth of relationship does still resonate, but it doesn't for me anymore, and frankly, I miss it. In the poem, Rumi advises the reader to fix your eyes on God and do not talk about what is invisible. For him, God is ever present, and the light of God is eternal and illuminates all things. He eschews the ephemeral light of the body and flesh of humanity for the eternal light of God. He imagines the bird of vision flying towards him, armed with God's desire to grant him and all people the particular vision that only God can grant. For me, I struggle with this idea of a connection with the divine, and with this notion that only God can grant me vision or mission or even comfort in difficult times. This past year has been a tremendous season of loss for many of my close friends and family members, and I have watched them handle it with a renewed sense of connection to the God of their understanding. And there can be deep meaning and a sense of relationship with a divine presence. And I'm grateful that they have had their faith in God to rely on during their most difficult days, that they are able to rejoice in the knowledge that their loved one's death is a wedding to eternity, as the poem states. Though I may struggle to have the faith of many of my loved ones, or that is so fervently and eloquently described by much of Rumi's poetry, I do feel that sense of connection to something greater than myself when I am in nature. When I hear the leaves moving in the breeze, or as I stand on the beach and listen to the waves and smell the sea salt in the air, I remember that I am a part of something and I feel relief, and that there is a deeper connection between the natural world and all of its inhabitants and me. I am part of the universe. And perhaps that's the lesson I can learn from this poem and others like it. That though I may not share the same beliefs as Rumi or have a personal relationship with the same God that he did, I do find meaning in my connection to the natural world and a feeling that I am part of a greater cosmic sense, though I may not always be able to call it by a particular name. It's a little bit of an awkward transition to the offering now. Didn't really know how to move into that one, but as was mentioned earlier in the joys, last night was the celebration dinner, and I just had such a fun time at it, and it was really wonderful. Appreciated the music by Dan and Ted, and it was just wonderful to have this truly multi-generational experience. And I feel like I think I've said this a couple times though, that I felt like I really experienced what was it like at First Parish before COVID, which I probably haven't gotten quite the dosage of that I wish I had. And so having opportunities like that and just being a part of this community was just, it's such a gift, you know. And when you support the work of the church, you're also supporting just this community, this ability to spend time together and eat and sing and just have kids run around and just have a wonderful time. So if you would like to support the work of the church, you can donate by going online to uuwayland.org/donate. There's some other options in your order of service. You can also drop a donation in one of the baskets that's being passed around. So now the offering will be gratefully received. Thank you.
Good morning. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I was shocked by the image that Lynn called up of herself as a moody adolescent. Can you picture it? Lynn, of all people. But after she started with that line, I was truly engaged. And I often counsel my students, I'm an English teacher, to begin with something surprising or shocking as a way of engaging the audience, but also as giving a purpose, because by the end of your essay or your poem, you should have reconciled that contradiction, that paradox, or given a new way of thinking about it. And that's something that I often find very valuable in reading poetry. I forget to read it sometimes, but when I go back, I'm gratified. It changes my view, and I'm reminded in the same way that I often forget how wonderful it is to be outside in the wintertime, that there are ideas and experiences on the page that broaden me. So I love that testimony about poetry. And I love what I've read of Rumi, and I don't know him as a religious person. I know him by the bits that have filtered into popular culture or into excerpts that allow some access to the universal, to things that I can relate to almost 1,000 years later. And his use of the word God, he means a different thing by it, but I often translate, and have grown more comfortable doing so, with thinking about God as the universe and as a representation of whatever has given us the gifts that we've received, because we've received so much, and it's easy to forget in a transactional world the gifts that we've gotten that came with no strings attached. I see this poem from Mathnawi 6 as being both a shocking new way of looking at a couple of concepts, but also as a reminder to us that we've been given so much, in that without looking to receive something in return, we wind up receiving so much when we forget about costs and benefits to ourselves. Love is reckless, not reason. Reason seeks a profit. Love comes on strong, consuming herself, unabashed. Yet, in the midst of suffering, love proceeds like a millstone, hard-surfaced and straightforward. Having died of self-interest, she risks everything and asks for nothing. Love gambles away every gift God bestows. Without cause, God gave us being. Without cause, give it back again. Gambling yourself away is beyond any religion. Religion seeks grace and favor, but those who gamble these away are God's favorites, for they neither put God to the test nor knock at the door of gain and loss. So I'm shocked at the first line of this poem, that love is reckless, because I think of recklessness as being irresponsible, as being a negative term. And by the end of this poem, I'm thinking of recklessness in a different way. I'm also shocked because reason seems to me unmitigated good. I mean, it's in every part of our way of thinking about the world. We like things to be logical, to make sense. But it does not make sense to give of yourself in a way that hurts. Yet the millstone so loves its object, whatever it is, that's not its focus at all. Yes, there's a cost to the millstone, but she risks everything and asks for nothing, having given up self-interest. Well, there's an exhortation here in the middle of the poem that says, without cause, God gave us being, gave us life, gave us experience, gave us the pews that we sit in, gave us the oak trees outside, gave us the day that we have. Give it back again. I really like being a Unitarian Universalist. And part of that is because I don't see it as a transactional relationship. I'm not trying to get to heaven. I'm not trying to avoid a consequence. I hope that I'm here out of the kind of care for other people that gives back without my seeking it. And I think we've heard other people talk about that today already. As a father and a husband and a son and a pet owner and a member of this congregation, I know what it is to feel the blessings of giving without expecting things in return. And if Rumi can shout that from 900 years ago, I think he sent a very good message.
Thank you, Dan, for that reflection. And thank you all for going on this journey of poetry with me today. Appreciate your willingness. For me, reading, as we were talking about, is a spiritual practice. And it's one that's brought a great deal of meaning into my life. And I hope you were able to find something that spoke to you today in one or maybe all of the poems that were read today. And I'd love to hear if you have a particularly beloved poem, either during community time or you can email me or call me. I'd love to talk with you about it more. With that said, please join me now for hymn number 127 in the great hymnal, Come Thou Font of Every Blessing, which is one of my all-time favorites. Just a reminder that we are going to have community time after this. There's also online community time, so please stay if you're able to online and engage in a discussion. Maybe you can share your favorite poems, who knows? I'll leave you with words from Sam Trumbore, Go Forth in Simplicity. Go forth in simplicity, find and walk the path that leads to compassion and wisdom, that leads to happiness, peace, and ease. Welcome the stranger and open your heart to a world in need of healing. Be courageous before the forces of hate. Hold and embody a vision of the common good that serves the needs of all people. Amen.